Hello, good morning everyone. Today we will begin our study of endocrine system, one of the two major communication system in the human body. The other one is the nervous system. So the nervous system communicate using electrical signals. We already go over that in class. And neurotransmitters, we talk about acetylcholine. They produce actually rapid response that lasts only short period of time. But in contrast to endocrine system, they communicate using hormones. Hormones are chemicals. They travel through bloodstream. Then reach to that effectors, target cells, maybe other glands. So the endocrine response are generally slower but last longer compared to nervous system. Together, the endocrine and nervous system work continuously to maintaining homeostasis. That ensure our body's internal environment remain constant or stable despite changes in that external environment. The overview of endocrine system, just I explain what is endocrine system is and their function. The endocrine system consists of glands, different glands. They secretes hormones directly into bloodstream. Then they travel to the target cells to maintain homeostasis. So this is what you call the hormones. They produce hormones. They secrete into the blood streams and send it to that target cells. Unlike exocrine glands, like a sweat gland, like pseudiferous, or then what else? Pancreatic juice produced by that exocrine glands. Pancreas. Pancreas is endocrine and exocrine gland. So they endocrine glands do not have ducts. For example, think about is a gland. They have ducts. They carry to that different parts. Whatever is produced inside the glass is secretions go through that ducts. But like I mentioned, endocrine glands, think about this is a gland. They secreted into that blood vessels. So they don't have ducts. So they release hormones directly into that bloodstream. Once that hormones enter into the blood, they travel through the body but only affect cells that have appropriate hormone receptors. So for example, these cells have the receptors for this particular hormone or chemical that affect that particular cells. So think of hormones as a key and receptors as a lock. So that is only the key is only work on that particular lock. That only the correct key can unlock that correct cell and trigger a response. So the main function, the metabolism and energy production, ATP production, control growth and tissue development, maintaining homeostasis. So these are the main functions of endocrine system. These are the functions explained in more details. Like I said, the endocrine system regulates many essential body functions. Metabolism regulate how quickly cells use nutrients and produce energy. Then development, ion balance. Make sure you look at each one how they using that different systems, different things they controlling different cardiovascular system, glucose production, reproduction, immune defense, digestion. Then next slide, this one we're going to more talking about the hypothalamus. Hypothalamus is a major part. That's a part of the brain we study in the nervous system. So this is a thalamus. This is a hypothalamus. This green structure. This is the infundibulum with the pituitary gland, anterior and posterior pituitary gland. So hypothalamus is the one we're going to explain. That is, they are neuroendocrine control system. There's mainly that they controlling that pituitary gland. Pituitary gland is a master gland. They produce hormones. So we're going to talk about that more details. So also when you see that hypothalamus, they serve as a major connection between nervous system and endocrine system. So it's also, when you look at that, it constantly monitor the body's internal conditions and determine when hormones level need adjusted. It's either inhibitory hormone they produce or releasing hormones to regulate the anterior pituitary gland. This anterior pituitary gland. It also synthesizes two important hormones, which is antidiuretic hormone and or you see ADH and oxytocin, which transported to that posterior pituitary. Posterior pituitary just to release the hormone which is produced by that hypothalamus. We going to see, you can see here anterior pituitary and posterior pituitary gland. Like I said, posterior pituitary we're going to go details which produce only that two hormones, release two hormones which are produced by that hypothalamus. So we're going to look at the hypothalamus function. We just explain a little bit the serve link between the nervous and endocrine. So it's produce releasing or inhibiting hormones that regulate anterior pituitary. Then also, like I said, ADH and oxytocin, which is stored and released at the posterior pituitary. So these are the hypothalamus thalamic hormones which are produced by hypothalamus. Make sure you write it down. These hormones names: thyrotropin releasing hormone. Then you can see these releasing hormones. These are inhibitory hormones. This goes to that anterior pituitary. All of them. This is going to that posterior pituitary. So each one, what is the main function for that thyroid, thyrotropin releasing hormone that's going to anterior pituitary. The main function stimulate uh, thyroid stimulating hormones. They produce that. Then this one, corticotropin releasing hormone or gonadotropin releasing hormone, gonadotropin hormone releasing hormone. So stimulate different things, such as follicular stimulating hormone, luteinizing hormone, or growth hormone things. If you want in mnemonics, make sure you look at that anterior pituitary gland, what are the hypothalamic hormones, how they affecting which hormones. These two are going to posterior pituitary. They are targeted that either kidney or oxytocin. We're going to explain more details each one later. The pituitary gland, like I mentioned, that is master gland located in that sella turcica. So also this one, like why this is a master gland, it regulates many other endocrine glands. So it will stays inside, like I said, in that sella turcica area. They have two parts, which is anterior portion and posterior pituitary gland. Hypothalamus and pituitary axis. We already seen that the portal system, which is controlling that anterior pituitary. They release this hypothalamus controlling anterior pituitary by that portal system. Then also that neural connections to that posterior pituitary. So it's releasing that they produce that oxytocin ADH, then release into that posterior pituitary. So we can see that how they develop, So anterior pituitary develop from that Radix pouch, that oral ectoderm, that is embryonic stage, that is ectoderm, mesoderm, and endoderm. This one that ectoderm structure, so that is the same thing in that oral cavity. You see those tissues, but this not a nerve, even though it's the brain, that is not a nerve cells. Posterior pituitary, which is developed from that neuroectoderm of the hypothalamus, is a part of that nervous system. Nervous tissue, granular tissue produce secrete hormones. This one actually store and release hypothalamic hormones. So it's the same thing, how they develop. So it's a part of that oral cavity. So now we're looking at that anterior pituitary hormones. So they secrete 6 major hormones. So each one, growth hormone, thyroid stimulating hormone. See this, you remember that previous slide, hypothalamus secrete or releasing hormone, inhibitory hormone. So based on that one, these hormones are produced. If it's producing certain hormone, releasing hormone, thyroid releasing hormone, then they release that thyroid stimulating hormone. is inhibiting hormone, so they inhibit. So you can see that each one, thyroid stimulating hormone, adrenocorticotropic hormone, follicle stimulating hormone, luteinizing hormone, or prolactin. So these hormones produced by that anterior pituitary gland. So where the target, this growth hormone, you can see that growth hormone is not only one area, it's in cells, liver, bones, muscles, cartilage. These areas, they are target. Main function is what? Body's growth. Stimulate that protein synthesis. You not growth, you need what? Protein. So fat breakdown, you need a fat to what? To make more energy. Clinical conditions, gigantism, acromegaly. So then pituitary dwarfism, all these things are different clinical conditions. You see that. TSH is a thyroid stimulating, that's affecting thyroid gland. So look at your, if you have hypothyroidism or that hypothyroidism, deficiency in that or excess in that thyroid hormone. So you can look at the clinical chart and see how this, they're looking at the TSH number, So if it's going higher number, if it's too much, that means what? Hypothyroidism, because it has to produce more and more in order to make that thyroid hormones. So if the thyroid hormones are T3 and T4, we're going to explain later. That is mainly the metabolism is correlated with that thyroid hormone. Certain age, the metabolism going to be decreased because of the thyroid hormone production is going to lower. So this one, adrenocorticotropic hormone, this mainly affecting the adrenal cortex. Cortex is adrenal gland above the kidney. The kidneys, two kidneys we have above the kidneys. There is adrenal gland. So adrenal gland, there is cortical region and medullary region. Inside part is medullary. This outside is a cortical region. So stimulate the cortisol secretion during the stress response. So you can see each one deficiencies. You can look at that. FSH is another one, follicle stimulating hormone, mainly that ovaries reproductive related hormone, ovaries female and testes in the male. Sperm production. More details we're going to study when we go over reproductive system. Luteinizing hormone, ovaries female, testis male. We can see what they do. Testosterone production in male, ovulation in female. That is another one, prolactin, mammary glands. They stimulates milk production after childbirth. Milk production. Okay. So this is mnemonics. You can look at that. Flat peg, number 6, anterior pituitary. Look at this one. Maybe you can write it down and study. Anterior pituitary hormones, we talk about where they are affecting. So anterior pituitary, they are stimulated by hypothalamus. They produce the hypothalamus produce either releasing or inhibitory hormones. Then they, based on that one, anterior pituitary produce those hormones. Then they targets is going to be different. Maybe thyroid gland, adrenal gland, maybe bone and tissues. That's a growth hormone. Yeah, maybe female reproductive structures, or that kidney antidiuretic hormone, which is we're going to study that a little later. That is from the posterior pituitary. This one is what? Posterior pituitary, oxytocin and ADH. All these are for that anterior pituitary. Don't confuse with that. This is for the posterior pituitary. This is the anterior pituitary. Posterior pituitary, like I said, that this one produce oxytocin and ADH. This one, everything else is what? Anterior pituitary hormones. Oxytocin is a milk ejection and labor. See, the other time I talk about prolactin, I think somewhere I mentioned here, that is what helps for that milk production. Not only produce, something has to eject, release, that is by that oxytocin. Also, that labor contraction time, the oxytocin helps. That is a positive feedback mechanism. When we study, we talk about oxytocin, contraction, more that helps for that labor time. So the more production of oxytocin, more contraction. This also you can look at that. Each one growth hormones, we can explain each one. Growth hormones actually promote protein synthesis. Think about what they do. What is the main function of growth hormone? To grow. Think about you are in the kindergarten till this point, you grew. Bones are grew. You are getting taller. So the more protein you need it, stimulate bone and cartilage growth, increase fat metabolism. Also, growth hormones has a direct effect on tissues, but many of its growth promoting actions occurred indirectly through insulin like growth factors. Maybe for example, growth factors 1, IGF-1 produced mainly by the liver. So other two lyric growth hormone during childhood result in that pituitary dwarfism. That's too much of this can be that gigantism. So also excess growth hormone in adult producing acromegaly. See. So sometimes you see those people characterized by enlargement of hand, feet and facial bones. So this is a growth hormone and their disorders. If you have excess or you lacking those growth hormone, what happen? So like I said, growth hormone stimulate liver and skeletal muscle to produce insulin like growth factors. Insulin like growth factors stimulate the cartilage growth, the bone growth, the protein synthesis, cell division. This all is need to what? Grow. So part of the growth. Then adipose tissue, that's a fat tissue. It's very important too. So here, hypothalamus, we know that that stress and low glucose, that is hypoglycemia, stimulate that pituitary hypothalamus to increase the growth hormone, releasing hormone. Then also decrease the growth hormone and inhibiting hormone. So you need not to grow, you need what? Releasing hormones as to produce. So hypothalamus, then is anterior pituitary. Anterior pituitary produces a growth hormone that affecting that adipose fat cells. Fat cells full of what? Energy, fats. Then liver. This is a direct effect on that growth by increasing that lipolysis, breaking down this fat. Is a direct effect on the growth hormone, that is gluconeogenesis. Neo means what? New. The genesis means what? Making new thing. This is a insulin like growth factors produced from the liver that stimulate that bone grow in bone and also muscle. So if it's too much, that effect is negatively affecting that hypothalamus and that inhibiting that growth factors. This green one is actually stimulate that production. This one is inhibiting the effect. So these are the disorders of that ADH. You can look at that things. We explain that one. You can take a look at that. Then next one is a thyroid stimulating hormone. Stimulate that thyroid gland to produce T3 and T4. This is a triiodothyronine. This one is thyroxine T4. This thyroid hormones increase the metabolism and heat production, energy utilization. So it take a lot of energy. So then if this TSH secretion decrease, thyroid hormone production will fail. So if this decrease, thyroid production also what? Fail, going down, resulting what? Hypothyroidism. Excessive stimulation leads to hyperthyroidism. That follicular cell, thyroid follicular cells, they produce this thyroid hormones. You need iodide is very important. That's why we in our salt we add that iodine in it. So we already seen this one, how they affecting directly TSH is affecting that thyroid gland and producing T3 and T4. So they increase that metabolic rate, BMR, basal metabolic rate, oxygen consumption. You need more oxygen, more ATP, heat production. So more you working, metabolism is higher, the heat production is also getting higher. Carbohydrate, fat, protein metabolism is very is increasing, stimulate those things because BMR to increase. Normal, then also support brain and nervous system, increase the heart rate and cardiac output, sympathetic nervous system, enhance that. So you ready to fight or flight situation, you are very active, you need a lot of energy, you are aware of your environment. So increase the basal metabolic rate, like I said, so increase the oxygen consumption, ATP production, heat generation, all connected. Stimulate sodium potassium ATPase pump, which is energy usage. And sodium potassium pump is ATP using. So ATP is what? Currency. So when you're making that ATP, more energy required. Increases the number and activity of sodium potassium pump, leading to greater ATP use and higher metabolic rate. So promote normal growth, work with growth hormone. So normal bone and muscle growth, repair, things will happen. It's supposed to in the normal condition. So cell maturation will happen. Protein synthesis is very important for that maturation. Cell differentiation, normal tissue development. Also brain development, nervous system. So we study that neurons, they connected by another neurons by what? Synapse. So more synapse means what? More neuron connection, communication is better way to go. That myelination also. Remember neurons, they have a myelin sheet around it. So that insulation is very important. So for that communication, that signals going through that axon. So this is all about this metabolic rate is going to be the normal is a normal condition. If you don't have any disease and stuff, so everything go properly. So how this work? Regulation, hypothalamus, that they produce what? Thyroid releasing hormone. That if is positive is going to be what? Positive feedback. Then what happens? Producing that going to anterior pituitary. Anterior pituitary produce TSH. Then they go to that thyroid. See this. Hypothalamus stimulate that pituitary by that thyroid releasing hormone. Then pituitary gland produce TSH. TSH go to that thyroid gland. Thyroid gland is a butterfly shaped structure gland. So the thyroid gland is produce T3 or T4. Either they both that what? The tissues, targeted tissues. If you have, then what if it's negative feedback? Then if you have too much production, what happens? So negatively that affecting that anterior pituitary and stop the production of that TSH. Release of that, then what happen here? They stop that thyroid releasing hormone production from the hypothalamus to maintaining that thyroid hormone level. The next one is adrenocorticotropic hormone that produced by that by the anterior pituitary gland, then stimulate that adrenal cortex to release cortisol. It's mainly the cortisol helps the body respond to stress, maintaining blood glucose and regulate metabolism. If you have excess of this ACTH, maybe contribute to Cushing disease. That means where the deficiency may cause secondary adrenal insufficiency. So regulation, hypothalamus, this one. You can see negative feedback. You can see that you can look at the hypothalamus to that cortico releasing hormone, anterior pituitary, adrenocorticotropic hormone, adrenal cortex, affecting that adrenal cortex. So this area, cortex, cortisol, then it's a negative feedback that will stop that hypothalamus to produce that CRH. Then next one is FSH, and I'm going to see three things: LH, luteinizing, follicular stimulating, and prolactin. So first, FSH stimulate ovarian follicle to develop in female production, female hormone production, and also in this also in male, that sperm production also they helps. maturation of ovarian follicle, estrogen secretion in male, Sertoli cells, they produce the sperm production. That sperm production, the process we called spermatogenesis. So the hypothalamus release gonadotropin releasing hormone. That gonadotropin releasing hormone stimulate the pituitary gland to produce follicle stimulating hormone. Then the follicular stimulating hormones, which is ovary or in the male that Sertoli cells, the intesticles, the different effect on that. So if you low in FSH, infertility, delay puberty, reduced sperm production can happen. High ovarian failure, menopause, testicular dysfunction, this can happen. The luteinizing hormone is that triggers ovulation in female and stimulate testosterone production in male. So the male, the testosterone produced in the testicles, particular cells, Leydig cells. So it's produced hypothalamus, gonadotropin releasing hormone, anterior pituitary, that LH over ovaries or testes, the production or regulation of the ovulation and things. Prolactin stimulate, like I said, that milk production in the mammary gland following childbirth. Then this one you can see. You can read this. We already talk about these things. So posterior pituitary only ADH and they are released, so ADH and oxytocin, they produced in that hypothalamus and stored in that posterior pituitary. ADH is the antidiuretic hormone, vasopressin, other name. ADH act on kidneys to increase water reabsorption. Think about diuretic, so they increase the water reabsorption. That means you don't have enough water in the system, this ADH is produced, so reabsorb all the water from the kidney so we can use it. When the body become, like I said, dehydrated, ADH secretion is increased. If you're dehydrated, you're thirsty, so what happened? The ADH secretion is increasing, allow the kidney to what? Reabsorb water and conserve water. So if you too little ADH result in that diabetes insipidus, excessive urination, excessive thirst, dehydration, things are symptoms. High too much result in that syndrome of inappropriate ADH secretions. These are water retention and low blood sodium. These are the clinical aspect of that if you have too little ADH. Oxytocin is another hormone produced by hypothalamus, released in the posterior pituitary. So this stimulate the uterine contraction during labor and cause milk ejection during breastfeeding. So during labor, each uterine contraction stimulates additional oxytocin release, producing even stronger contraction until delivery occurs, which is a positive feedback mechanism we studied earlier in that chapter 1. So the feedback mechanism, either positive or negative feedback mechanism, make sure you look at that. Negative feedback maintain balance. Most of the our system go through the post negative feedback mechanism, maintaining the homeostasis by negative feedback mechanism. Only few things, blood clotting, other one is this one, oxytocin production, that used for the labor contraction. That is a positive feedback mechanism part of that. We can look at this, what is a positive and negative feedback mechanism. Hormone regulation. Most endocrine glands are regulated by negative feedback mechanism, like I said. As hormone level increases, they signal the hypothalamus and pituitary to reduce further hormone secretion. Is the negative feedback maintain stable hormone level and prevent overproduction. Effect of aging on endocrine system, which is um, when you're getting older, gradual decrease in that some of the glands. Um, so the hormone production is going to be lower. So sometimes we have to supplement those hormones, like insulin. We take it when you're getting older. People diabetic, some of the hormone production decreases, hormone estrogen and things like that. So so several disease when you get a result from the hormone imbalance, growth hormone deficiency, like we say that dwarfism in that younger age. So diabetes insipid as a result from that, inadequate ADH. Then what is that? Different things, hyperthyroidism or hypothyroidism can form. So make sure you know that, understand hormone regulation. Regulation help us understand these disorders. So summary, today we have learned that endocrine system communicate through hormones carried in the bloodstream. We cover that one. Hypothalamus coordinating that endocrine activity and by controlling the pituitary gland. Anterior pituitary gland produce hormones that regulate growth, metabolism, stress response, reproduction. We study that. Posterior pituitary, we produce what? Oxytocin and antidiuretic hormones. Then finally, the negative feedback maintain hormone balance and allow the body to maintaining homeostasis. In our next lecture, we examine that endocrine gland in greater detail. If you have any questions, you can ask. Then we have a Mentimeter question. You can scan or you can go through that. Some of the questions are there. You can study and see that. Okay. You all have a great day.